Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen of Madison Maximize Living. Have you ever felt inundated with news articles and drug commercials and found it hard to make sense out of them because there's just too much information? Join co-host Stacy Hansen and myself as we help you make sense out of current news and events on Natural Healthcare News, coming up next on Wisconsin 57.
Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking natural healthcare news today with some exciting news to share with you from around the web. One of the things I've got here today is from the Business Insider, and it talks about how to get a better night's sleep, and really who isn't looking for that. Some of the things on here you may have heard before, but some are a little surprising. They talk again about that blue light emitting from all your devices, and keep that far away from your bed. And try not to be on your phone or the computer. I know it's a lot to ask, especially with the phone, within 2 hours of your bedtime.
That's hard.
Yeah, so there's probably not many of us that are doing that. Caffeine takes 5 to 6 hours to wear off. So later in the day when you start to slump, you're not going to want to pick up that caffeine, or you may pay for it later. You want to try to keep your sleep schedule pretty much the same. If you vary by when you wake up by more than 2 hours, you're starting to ask for trouble. You could even gain weight. That way it says. You want to make sure you're not getting a lot of natural light or any kind of light exposure at night to control your levels of melatonin. This one I'm kind of guilty of, these next couple. You want to try to exercise in the morning, and you want to also not eat within 3 hours of bedtime. I'm in like a dangerous sort of cycle here, Dr. Pat. I end up exercising in the evening, and then I have to eat dinner after that and then go to bed like 2 hours later. And I don't sleep as well, so you want to avoid that.
Well, you can exercise in the evening, but generally not more than 3 hours before.
Yeah.
At least 3 hours before it works. But some people's physiology is different, and they relax when they work out, and then they fall right to sleep. So whatever's working is fine, but those are the general principles, I think.
Sounds like I want to move that dinner, though, to before exercising.
It's hard to do, though. How do you exercise after you eat?
I know, yeah. So you may be in a rock and a hard place like I am, but also limit your alcohol intake. I've noticed too that if I do have a drink, I don't drink very often, but when I do, I find that I don't sleep as well.
Yeah.
That night.
You might fall asleep faster, but you wake up because you get a less restful sleep with alcohol.
And then you're just sort of stuck there. So
it really doesn't reduce stress.
Yeah. So some of those things you kind of want to keep in mind and maybe help you get a better night's sleep.
On that same sleep front, thedailymail.com asks the question, do you sleep more than 9 hours in a day? It could be a sign of dementia. Inability to get out of bed may be a symptom of this disease.
Wow.
So people who spend a long time in bed are twice as likely to develop dementia over the next decade in this study. And this was lead author Dr. Matthew Pace from Boston University Medical Center. He said a self-reporting sleep duration is a useful clinical tool, maybe a useful clinical tool in predicting persons at risk of developing dementia, and also problems with monitoring. The level of your sleep is important, and if you have long rambling speech, that could be a early sign of dementia building. And losing a sense of smell, there's a test actually called the peanut butter test. And he talks about that in here, that if you lose that inability to smell peanut butter, that's a sign that there's brain degeneration going on.
Who knew? So these are some things that if you're noticing these, you're going to want to mention this or to your primary care provider.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so previous studies also showed people with early dementia also suffer from interrupted sleep. It's thought to be a similar sign of neurodegeneration. So from a more practical experience, I know people who were depressed and they started sleeping really long. One case in particular, she was sleeping 12 hours a day. She was really depressed. So she was depressed, so she slept, but I believe that sleep worsened her depression. Because your brain really needs movement as stimulation to get going, and then that helps with, that's why exercise is so helpful, and with so many people with depression, if they're exercising regularly, makes a big difference for them.
Yeah, they say that that's just as effective or more effective than some of those medications even can be. So, but definitely talk to your primary care provider about that. But stay with us. We have more natural health care news right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking today about natural health care news with some things to share with you that we've discovered around the web. I've got one here from lifehacker.com, and it talks about the difference between natural toothpaste and just your regular toothpaste. And I was surprised to find here that it says, you've got a dentist on here saying that the main benefit of brushing is actually the brushing itself, and the brand and type of toothpaste you use is actually pretty secondary. It says that pretty much all toothpaste, even the natural ones, have 4 main ingredients. Natural toothpaste have those same ingredients, although they may skip fluoride and add some other ingredients. But they say here it makes pretty much, not much difference at all in how clean your teeth actually end up.
Well, from what I understand, it's really the time spent brushing that's more important than anything. Even if you didn't use any toothpaste at all, it's the time brushing and getting that plaque off that's really the most important.
Yeah, that's interesting to find.
Yeah. I have one here on the top 10 potassium-rich foods. It's from drax.com. Potassium is the third most abundant mineral in the body. That's behind calcium and magnesium, by the way. And it's used for important organ function, including the heart, kidneys, brain, and muscular tissues. It keeps the body hydrated. And potassium deficiency symptoms can include severe headaches, dehydration, heart palpitations, and swelling of glands and tissues. Deficiency can lead to fatigue, irritability, muscle cramps, weight gain, increased blood pressure, and if those don't get your attention, increased cellulite buildup.
Oh yeah, everyone snapped to attention there. What?
And some of the culprits that cause low potassium are endurance cardiovascular exercise without proper hydration, and if you're having vomiting or diarrhea, or a diet low in fruits and veggies. If someone is saying, I just don't like vegetables, they probably need to take a look at their potassium. And some of the top 10 sources are avocado. I was surprised at how high that was. That was listed number 1.
It's not the first one you think of when you think of potassium.
The 4,700 milligrams a day is the RDA, recommended dietary allowance. And an avocado has 1,000 milligrams. Spinach, 800. Wow. Sweet potato, 900. Coconut water, 600. Kefir. White beans, banana starts going down. Acorn squash, dried apricots, and mushrooms. So it's hard to go wrong eating real food.
Yeah, we keep coming back to that, the fruits and veggies. You've just got to work those into your diet. I've got one here. This is actually from Excedrin, but it says, is your screen time giving you a headache? Your headache might actually be caused by some of the screen time with your smartphone. There's something actually called computer vision syndrome, also known as digital eye strain. And symptoms of this include eye strain, blurred vision, neck and shoulder pain, and headaches. So they advise trying to give yourself a break here. There's a 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes or so, look into the distance about 20 feet for 20 seconds, and that should help alleviate some of that. Also want to make sure you're not having a lot of glare on your screen. And then when you can, if you've got a lot to read, just print it out.
That sounds great. I got another 20-20 rule I'd like to mention.
What's that?
Every 20 minutes, do 20 push-ups, 20 jumping jacks, and 20 crunches. You won't be getting headaches either.
Yeah.
But screen time is a big deal. We have this light emitting into our eyes, and our posture is usually terrible on a computer, and it really wreaks havoc in our lives. Plus, sitting that long is just hard. So take motion breaks and watch the screen glare and change your focus of your eyes frequently. You actually get more done if you get up moving around for a bit and then sit down again.
I believe that.
I've got one here. Is sugar bad for you? Or here's how it destroys your body from drax.com. It's quite interesting. Most people blame dietary fat for heart disease. And while certain industrial inflammatory fats like trans fats do cause heart attacks, sugar is the real culprit. Wow. And so there's a new thinking going on. In fact, 2016 researchers unearthed a huge sugar industry scandal proving that the sugar lobby sponsored phony Harvard research in the 60s. We've heard of fake news, and we're concerned about fake research these days.
Wow.
And it turns out the sugar was downplayed and the fats were elevated as cause of heart disease, and it's really the other way around more so than not.
Wow, so you really want to watch that sugar. Well, stay with us. We have more natural healthcare news right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking natural health care news today. And before the break, we were talking about sugar and some of the damaging effects it can have on your body. So we wanted to go into a little more detail on that.
Yes, this report from Dr. Axe talks about sugar affecting every organ system in the body. And the fact that if you have 21% of your calories from sugar, you're twice as likely to have cardiovascular disease.
Wow, twice as likely. That's a big difference.
Yeah, and the average American gets about 22 teaspoons worth of sugar, and the recommendation are more like 6 teaspoons for women and 9 teaspoons for men as a maximum. You don't really need any.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not one of those superfoods that we talk about on the show sometimes. And
it can cause conditions like called leaky gut, which is something I think we'll hear a lot more about in the future. Intestinal permeability. Type 2 diabetes, for every 150 calories, which is 9 teaspoons of sugar, there's a 1.1% increase in diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And it may increase risk of cancer. A study out of the University of Texas, Andersen Cancer Center. And one of the things they talked too about was fatty livers, build up fat in the liver, which is increasing like obesity is increasing, so is fatty liver disease increasing. And it upsets the microbiome. The sugar actually feeds some of the bad microbes and can often then develop yeast infections and imbalance in the microbiome. And lastly on the article, they talk about a lot of the different names of sugar, this hidden sugar so many places, anhydrous dextrose, confectioner's powdered sugar, high fructose corn syrup solids, dextrose, fructose, invert sugar, lactose, malt syrup, maltose, nectars, sucrose. So there's a lot of different names to be looking for.
It can be hiding in
that. So you really don't need sugar, and if you're going to get some sugar, I'd have it from the fruits and get all the antioxidants and minerals and vitamins from that.
Yeah, the benefits and the fiber from some of that. I've got one here from The Guardian about back pain and whether painkillers are really offering you help for it truly. And the American College of Physicians has announced that drugs should no longer be the first line of treatment. They recommend that you try heat, massage, maybe even acupuncture. And Dr. Pat, you'll like this. The ACP does suggest trying spinal manipulation.
Yes, and it's good because in so many studies they don't mention chiropractic care for, I think, political reasons, but yet it is the widest used alternative healthcare method out there by far, and U.S. Agency for Healthcare Policy and Research said it's the most effective form of care for back pain, acute back pain. So, you know, the research is, you gotta be careful what you're reading and who's sponsoring it. But we're glad for any positive information.
Yes, you got a shout out on that one.
Here's one, is wild salmon a better and healthier choice than farmed? We all make this choice, don't we?
Right.
You go into a store and it's farmed salmon, but it's not just normally farmed salmon, it's fresh farmed salmon. So you kind of don't see the word farmed.
Yeah.
But here in this study by the South China Morning Post, choosing wild salmon over farmed salmon can help reap more nutritional benefits while avoiding higher levels of fat and dangers of toxic contaminants. So the real reason why it goes through here is, well, what the fish are fed if they're farmed, they're close to shore, and they're fed things like fish products, and which are high in PCBs, and they end up getting to be a fattier fish, and not as much protein in the fish, and more contaminants in it. So you're better off sticking with wild salmon.
So still stick with that wild salmon. Don't be fooled by fresh farmed
salmon. Exactly.
It's still farmed. So stay with us. We'll have more on natural health care news right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking natural health care news today. This is one from the Associated Press, and it talks about pediatricians warning against pot use. It's something you might not have really thought about, but it said that as more states are starting to legalize some of this, for medical reasons, parents are sometimes saying they're finding that, I use it moderately. They're saying, maybe it's benign and not a problem if my kid uses it. Actually, it is. The brain continues to develop until your early 20s. It raises some concerns about some of these consequences. Some studies are showing that teens that use marijuana at least 10 times a month are developing changes in their brain regions. It's affecting their memory and their ability to plan. This is sometimes permanent. Frequent use starting in the early teen years is also showing that it might lower your IQ scores. And again, that could be permanent. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that you're going to be wanting to just be as lax about as some people might think.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a drug, and it should be, used as little as possible. Mm-hmm. I know kids will experiment, but some will, but it is a road to other drugs. And it's not very expensive, but the concern is the heroin epidemic is horrible. I read an article where 4 out of 5 people get hooked on heroin after prescription oxycodone, prescription opiates. Now, I thought that was high. I've heard 1 out of 3 before, but 4 out of 5 seems really high. So it's just good to stay away from that as much as humanly possible.
Right.
Because it does have effects on a developing brain especially. I've got one from The Truth About Cancer. Gut health alert, 4 factors that put your gut microbiome at risk. And the gut microbiome are all those trillions of microbes, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and more that make our ecosystem we call our microbiota or microbiome in the intestines. And that balance is really important. So when we eat lousy foods, poor quality, too much sugar, we break that down. And it's been linked to having a poor gut microbiome has been linked to cancer, autoimmune disease, allergies, depression, autism, obesity and weight gain, and Alzheimer's, just to mention a few. 4 common ways your gut microbiome gets out of balance. Artificial sweeteners is number 1. Things like sucralose, where sugar is taken and it's chlorinated, and it's not natural. It's kind of like hydrogenating margarine, the hydrogenated margarine. Mm-hmm. And now studies have come out and says eat butter because margarine is a trans fat. It's not healthy for you. And here we thought for a long time margarine was better.
Right. You thought you were doing the right thing.
Yeah. And so we got to pay close attention. It's hard to go wrong when you go natural. But there are a lot of issues with artificial sweeteners with that. Alcohol consumption is linked to disrupting the microbiome and throwing the balance off. So if you're having alcohol, make sure to take a good probiotic supplement. And the next one, factor 3, is a poor diet. A poor diet really throws off our intestinal tract. And too much sugar and unhealthy fats, too many carbs, inflammatory foods are lacking, such as fresh green leafy vegetables, a diet low in enzymes, antioxidants, eating broad products laden with preservatives, chemicals, pesticides, the disappearance of fermented foods from our diets, and incorrect supplements, thinking, for example, like a yogurt full of sugar and 1 probiotic is all you need to do. So that significantly affects our health. things that we do. And factor 4 is using antibiotics. People really need to be aware that when you take antibiotics, you do kill off all the bacteria, or most of them. Some of the strong ones survive, and it's really often a cause of candida overgrowth and things like that. So taking probiotics during that course of antibiotics can be very important.
Can help offset some of that. It's funny how we keep finding more and more about how much gut health really affects your whole body, even your mind. Well, stay with us. We have more on natural healthcare news right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Thank you for watching our show on Natural Healthcare News. We hope each of these shows will encourage you to make better choices and minimize confusion on what to do for you and your family's health. If you think about it, it's hard to go wrong choosing natural healthcare with less side effects and less cost. For the best natural methods, be sure to include chiropractic wellness care as part of your family's healthcare regime. It starts with an easy yet fascinating evaluation of your spine and nervous system. In almost every case, if your spine and nervous system aren't functioning right, it leaves clues such as bad posture, limited motion, weak muscles, or even a short leg. Call us at 608-833-1282 for a checkup today. For Maximize Living, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen. Until next time, live well and God bless.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.